What's up, everyone? Troy Benjamin of Backup Barista, and welcome to Round Cup Chat, where we brew over all the grinding stories from the eyes of your coffee community. From roasters, suppliers, baristas, cafe owners, importers, consumers, it's 45 minutes of fire, daily at 3 p.m. Watch the replays on YouTube, Spotify, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter. Now, let's meet today's guest. Tim.
Hello. Good morning, or good evening, or whatever you have.
Yeah, I did look up just before I jumped on what time this would be for you, and it was something like 7:30 or something.
Yes, but I have been baking bread already, so.
Have you?
Been awake for an hour. Yes.
That's epic. Nice to formally, informally, however you call this, meet you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me. Yeah.
So what's the life of Tim Wendelboe up to now? You've got a pretty cool, snazzy shop going on. Are you working there at the moment in the current climate?
I'm not working in the shop. I think it was 2 years ago, we separated our roastery from our shop. So that's kind of where my office is. And because of the Corona situation, we're trying to kind of split our workforce into two teams so that one doesn't contaminate another. Because if one of us gets sick, we have to close down everything. So I have one roaster working in the shop, and then I have two roasters working in the roastery, and they're not allowed to even meet each other.
Right. Is it so? How seriously is it? Is it from a I guess a customer walk-in view? Are you open for takeaway? Are you offering some extra services?
Yeah, no, we're open for takeaway, and we're shipping a lot through our web shop. Our sales has been growing a lot in the web shop. You know, most Norwegians love to make filter coffee at home, like pour over or whatever. So, normally our sales is pretty good in our web shop, but now it's, I wouldn't say double, but maybe up 60%. And also we sell a lot of beans in the store. And next week we're actually about to launch a new pilot with the main mail delivery service here, where you can order coffee beans and get it delivered to your door within 2 hours in the capital city.
How are you doing that?
I don't know. they have like Foodora, these kind of services where you order foods. It's kind of the same, but with food like fresh fish and coffee and bread and stuff like that. So it's a pretty good idea.
Was there already a 2-hour window available prior to you doing it?
No, but the mail service, they have cars going around the city all the time. So a lot of times they can just come and pick up and then deliver wherever. So I think it's something new that they're kind of want to get into. They see that a lot of competitors are trying to do the same, but of course, the Norwegian mail service will have more resources to But it's a pilot project, so we're going to test it for like 3 months, and then if it's going well, then we'll launch it.
Yeah. So, mate, you've been around the game for a hell of a long time, and not just kind of not hidden away either. Like you kind of, when did you kind of, I guess, hit the public eye more than most?
Well, when I started was in 1998. The coffee scene here in Norway was quite new. I mean, Norwegians have always been drinking coffee, and but the kind of new modern coffee shop were like 1 or 2 years old, and there were just a few in the city. And then I got a job in one of them, and it took like 6 months before I started competing in the competitions. And because it was very new, it kind of caught the media's attention, and the shop that I was working at was in the same street as all the major newspapers. So I think it was like the year after I started, my first newspaper appearance came about, and then I went to a lot of these kind of local television and even national television stuff. And young as I was, I really loved the limelight. So
Wow.
I had a policy to always say yes, regardless what it was. Like if media contacted me, I would always say yes, and that's been helpful. And then, of course, in an international scene, that was also the start where the WC was new and fresh. And because I had been competing in Norway, the Norwegians actually created the format of this competition. So
Oh, is that right? Geez,
yeah,
right.
it started.
Oh, that's an encouragement.
So it was not so difficult to understand why we did well in the first years. And I think because we had a good environment in Norway where people wanted to learn and so on. When we went to these kind of trade shows, we went to some barista classes in the United States, and we ended up teaching the teacher because they didn't really know anything back then, and that was advanced. I wouldn't say advanced, but so I think that just caught people's attention. It was not just me; it was like several people from the Nordic countries, and
yeah.
And we started something called the Nordic Barista Cup, and that also caught a lot of the attention. It was just when Barista Magazine started. We used to have blogs, and people used to read blogs, and then out of that came like forums where people used to communicate through forums. I don't think people do that anymore, but there was something called Coffees.
I think Reddit's the only one that is really reputable.
Yeah, but there was like online forums where I was quite active together with a lot of other people, and that kind of, I guess, manifested my position in the barista world at least. And then I kind of quit my barista game and started roasting and opening a shop, and just been working hard to try to be as good as possible, I guess. And always kind of documenting and sharing information. So I think sharing information is probably the best reason to become someone in the coffee world if you're willing to share information.
Yeah, people know that you're available. It's it's a big thing. I agree.
And for me, it was always a career choice as well. Like I didn't really go to university or didn't.
Yeah.
I was tired of school, so I knew that I really loved working in coffee and thought I can make a career here. So kind of been working hard to at least try to create a brand in the industry. So that it could.
And was it in Nordic culture? In Norway, what do you say? Norwegian culture, or is that Nordic? My language is probably not the best around it.
It's pretty similar in all the Nordic countries, yeah.
Okay, so in Norway, in particular, where you were brought up, coming up as a barista, was it a uni? Was it like it is here, where in the 90s it was a job on the side, and people didn't really give you a lot of like, what are you up to with your life, Tim? How are you progressing? And you say that, and it wasn't really received well.
Yeah,
was it the same
it's
for
kind
you?
of the same. Yeah, it's the same, and I think it's quite the same still. But
right.
My friends and family have realized that you can have a career in it, and I have several team members who have been working. Our bar manager has been with us for almost 10 years. And
right.
I have people who've been there like 5, 6, 7 years, and they love working here. So as long as you can pay them a good salary and they feel like they have a meaningful work, I think there's nothing wrong in having a career as a barista or a roaster or
I think that's what's helped the status of being a barista and in the coffee game is that there's some longevity in it now.
Yeah, for sure.
And confidently, like you can say, well, if your old school parents or your community was saying, well, where are you going to go after that? What are you going to do after that? Like you can actually throw some weight around and say, look, I want to kind of eventually get into roasting, or I would like to eventually own my own shop, or I want to become an influencer. As cringy those people are sometimes, like there's so many avenues that have, especially since you started as well.
Yeah, but I still think the majority of people who work with us are on their way somewhere else, and it's the same kind of in most coffee shops that I see. That maybe I don't even know the percentage, but I think the majority is there for a while and then they become doctors or whatever.
Yeah, right. We've got some questions popping up So
Great.
I won't try and interrupt you too much, but also snap these up when they fly through. Good morning, Tim. Do you think people will drink more or less, I guess that is, specialty coffee after the COVID-19 crisis is over? Best regards, Kaj and Dan. You can maybe read that Swedish. I don't know how to say that. Say those areas. Yeah.
Well, we're experiencing that people buy a lot more beans,
Yeah.
private consumers. So, a lot of people are working from home. They can't go out to restaurants and spend money there. So at least what we're seeing in Norway, where people, the economy is quite good, I have to say. And people are spending a lot of money on, buying wine and good food, good coffee, because, they can't go to concerts, they can't go to restaurants. So at least you need to have something to look forward to. But
Yeah.
we do sell a lot of coffee to offices and restaurants normally, but now they're shut down. So, volume-wise, we're probably selling, I would say, 30% less or 40% less coffee than we normally do, but we're just selling it in different channels now. So
Yeah.
we're selling to more people, but less volume. So I
We
think,
had a chat with.
it really depends on each country, I think. But here in Norway, at least, people are used to making coffee at home. So
Right.
they like to buy good coffee.
I mean, we had a chat yesterday to Athan from 3000 Thieves, one of the biggest subscription service coffee delivery people in Australia, and he was saying that he invested about 60% or 70% of his business into offices, and it's just literally swapped over to home, like just seamlessly.
Yeah, we actually,
Which is great.
from last month to this month, we grew our subscription with, I think, 20%. So
Brilliant.
that's pretty good. And in addition to a lot of web shop sales. And we actually put some of our coffees on sale, which we have never done before. But it's basically we have a lot of coffee in storage, and new coffee harvests are starting to come in. So we really need to get rid of last crop and before it starts to age. And the effect on just putting a coffee on sale was enormous. We sold so much more coffee online just because we did that. And we're still we can still make a little bit of money on it, but we just need to help people realize that they can buy coffee and make it at home, and it can taste delicious. So we've also been doing some kind of Instagram brewing classes and so on.
I love them. They're brilliant. I think it's important. Well, it's important to engage. It's the premise of why I'm doing this personally as well, is to kind of bring some engagement into my own business, but also to spread that connection to other people. And if no one's doing it, you might as well do it. But those brewing tips from you have been great, and you've made an effort, to produce them well. And
yeah, we try. We have a new marketing manager, and she loves to do this kind of stuff. So it's also a great way for kind of getting her into the job and for her to learn fast, how we like to do stuff. Because we normally produce videos every month for our subscribers, but I'd like to produce more. And we haven't had an in-house photographer for quite a while, and she's a very good photographer. So I'm hoping to be able to produce a lot more videos.
I've got a question here asking, when do you get up?
In the morning?
You've got another sleep time? You got the siesta already? You got the siesta going on as well?
No, not really. It's Labor Day today, so all the stores are closed, and I'm actually going to work a little bit, so I figured I would bake a bread, and I wanted to do it before we did this talk. So normally I don't get up that early. My office is like 2-minute walk from my flat, so I normally wake up 7:30 or 8:30, and then I'm at work at 8 or 9 normally.
I've got a question on a bit more to do with palate. Thanks Eddie08, and thanks everyone. If everyone's got some questions, just drop them down low and we'll squeeze them in. How can I differ the taste between bitter and sour? Thanks Eddie08.
Wow, well, very easy. If you eat a lemon, that's sour. If you eat grapefruit, that has sourness and bitterness. Also, you can chew the peel of or orange or lemon. That's very bitter, whereas the orange will be sweet and sour or acidic, and the peel will be bitter. So that's a very good way of differentiating, I think, that we use a lot. You can also, you know, if you chew a very darkly roasted coffee bean, that's going to be quite bitter. So bitterness has so many different, there's so many different types of bitterness. So it's kind of hard to say that this is bitter, because it can be many things. But sourness is normally, you know, when you bite into a lemon and you get this kind of feeling on the side of your mouth, where you kind of do like this. That's normally sourness. And we, you know, people, at least in my experience, consumers are very afraid of buying coffee when they hear the word acidity, because they don't like sour coffees.
Yeah, true.
But I think a lot of times they're actually confusing it with bitterness, because in my experience, when we serve them like a Kenyan coffee that it's very high acidity, they tend to really enjoy it. And if you think of like when you make lemonade, if you put lemon in water, it normally tastes quite sour if you have a lot of lemon in the water. But if you start putting sugar in, it starts to be pleasant to drink and becomes like a nice lemonade. But and that's the sweetness that's balancing it out. And I think, you know, a lot of times when people brew coffee, they're under extracting, which means you don't get that sweetness to balance out the sourness, because you do extract acidity quite fast from coffee, and the sweetness you kind of need to either more time, or you have to grind a little bit finer to get that sweetness out to balance it.
Is it true that the sweetness comes out in the first component of the shot?
Well, I don't really think so. I think, you know, at least from my experience, when you brew coffee in general, longer extraction times or more higher extraction gives you a perception of more sweetness. Now, I'm not sure that you can actually relate sweetness in coffee to sugar content, because there's very little sugar in coffee. So it's more like a mouthfeel kind of sensation maybe. But, you know, it's very easy to extract coffee fast. You know, the majority of what you get into the cup is extracted in the the start of the brewing process. But you need to kind of extract more to get sweetness and so on. So I think, you know, with espresso, if you split the shot into 3 halves, like I learned at the Illy factory many years ago. They call it to pull a salami. I don't know why, but that's like you make an espresso shot and you take the first 10 seconds into a cup, the next 10 seconds into a cup, and the last 10 seconds into a separate cup, and you taste them. None of them taste really nice, you know. Maybe the middle one is the most pleasant one, but the first one normally tastes quite sour and salty, and then the last bit is just like slightly bitter water, and the middle part is, you know, somewhat pleasant. But when you mix them together, it starts to taste good. So that's a good exercise. If you have questions like that, you should just test, you know, breaking it up and taste the first part of the extraction and see how does that taste like.
That's brilliant. I mean, I've only ever done that on the back end of a shot. I've mainly only dealt with espresso in my former cafe, and I would always just taste the start and how soon to chop it off.
Yeah.
And would just taste the last bit to make sure that I didn't want that part. But
you know, the last bit is not so strong. So
no,
you know, you're basically just diluting your espresso a little bit, and sometimes it can help to kind of just balance it out a little bit. Sometimes also it can be awful if you have like severe channeling or whatever. It's it's better to put clean water in than dirty water sometimes.
To top it up. Philly Pie. Some of these Instagram handles are so funny. I love it. Tim, anything unique you do in your V60 brew process, or any tips for brewing V60? Thanks, Philly.
Don't overcomplicate it. That's my tips. You know,
I've noticed that on your videos. They're great.
Yeah.
I noticed that was the first one that stood out.
I think, you know, not just with V60, but I've been judging a lot of the World AeroPress competitions, and the ones that tend to not make it to the second round are the ones who overcomplicate their brewing method.
Right.
You know, the less that can go wrong, the more easy it is to be consistent from brew to brew. So I think, you know, trying to be consistent is key if you want to have consistent results. I brew a lot of V60 when I'm on my farm in Colombia, and you know, I measure the amount of coffee and the amount of water, but I don't really time it or anything. You know, I kind of do a little bloom and then I just pour the water, and you know, it normally tastes quite good. So if you have good coffee and good water and a good grinder, it's quite easy to make a good V60. So make sure you have like really good coffee beans, good soft water, not too hard, and a good grinder. And also, I would say the paper filters can really screw up your brewing. Some of them can be clogged very fast, so that the coffee doesn't kind of go through the filter, and and that's that can be a problem. So a paper filter is not a paper filter. There's many different types, and it's really hard to know which one you have, if it's fast or slow. But I always, at least with lighter roast, I always recommend brewing with the hottest water possible. That way it goes through the filter faster as well. And if you have problems with the slow filters, don't stir too much in the slurry and stuff like that, because the fines in the grounds are just gonna move down faster if you start to stir a lot and then block the filter, and then you know you just choke the whole brew. So
yeah, right. Have you got a lot of inconsistency with filter papers, even from the same companies that you use, or have you got kind of one or two that you just stick with all the time?
From time to time. So what I do now is like for work, at least. I don't do this for home, but for work I tend to buy in bulk, you know, so that when you find a filter that works, you just buy a lot of them so that you have them for a long time. But I just received some interesting filters from Spain that's considered to be like a fast filter, but I need to test it before I say anything about it. But I just tested it once and it looked really, really promising. So I might have to compare to those. They're probably going to be very expensive and so on, but you know, that's the problem when people invent good stuff. It becomes
explain a little bit about, if you can be bothered, about hard and soft water.
Yeah, so here in Norway, we're actually blessed with really, really good water for brewing coffee. It's very, very soft. It's like surface water from a lake that's very close by here in Oslo.
Right.
And we don't even have chlorine in the water because we have a new water filtration system, like government or the city has a new filtration system. So actually the water is so soft that they have to add a marble dust to it because when the water is too soft, it corrodes the copper pipes, which can be a problem. So they have like filters with I think it's like ceramic filters or sand filters or something that adds a little bit of minerality to it. But it's basically, when you have soft water, you basically get more like a popping acidity. The coffee feels much lighter and more vibrant. Of course, it can be too soft. If you have like distilled water, you get a really strange cup. There's almost no body, and it's a little astringent. And on the other end, if it's too hard, you get like chalky flavor. It mutes the acidity if you have too much calcium or what's it called, bicarbonate. So, you know, for instance, in Copenhagen, if you use the tap water there, the coffee is going to taste horrible, regardless how you brew or whatever, because the water has like 500 parts per million, and it's really, really hard. So what water to choose? Well, it really depends. Like in my experience, anywhere between 50 parts per million to 150 parts per million is normally good. Of course, that just tells you one thing. It doesn't tell you how much magnesium, how much calcium. But you can play around a lot with water. But again, it needs to be simple. Like I can't be bothered, spending 3 hours just brewing a cup of coffee. So if you find water that's soft and nice, just use that one, and buy coffees that taste good with that. And I think a lot of times people are overcomplicating things because they're not actually using very good coffee, or the very good water. So they try to compensate by tweaking their brewing process or whatever, instead of just making sure that the ingredients are good, and then it's pretty easy to brew.
Mm. It's fascinating. Charlie Chua, how do you differentiate the different type of acids? Kind of.
Well, I'm not sure. You can actually.
Yeah.
You can buy these organic acid solutions and taste those in water, which I've done on like Q grading class and so on. And then it's it's difficult to describe. Citric acid is a little bit more aggressive, I would say, than the malic acid you can taste. The phosphoric acid just feels like, almost like umami. It's like just makes you salivate a little bit more.
Right.
Tartaric acid is like when you eat very sour grapes, green apples. Citric acid is more like lemon. Phosphoric acid is what they put in Coca-Cola and stuff. But most of the times when you drink coffee, they have more complex acidities than just these one solutions that you can taste. And I've also heard that I spoke to a Colombian guy that was doing some research with the university there, and they say, you can't really, even if there is more malic acid in the coffee, you don't really taste that it's more malic, or so I'm a little skeptical to all this kind of trying to nail this. When you taste coffee, you can say this coffee tastes malic. Well, yeah, maybe, I don't know, but I tend to use words that are a little bit easier for people to understand, like instead of saying malic, you can say apples.
And try and leave it open for them to kind of fine tune it to themselves.
Yeah, because an apple can be green, it can be red. You can be specific there, but it's. And I also think people perceive flavor differently. I'm not sure if you're able to actually describe those acids so that it makes sense to other people. You have to kind of experience it yourself.
Yeah. Brilliant. Luke Tyron Powell, what's good, man? What's the most memorable moment you've experienced in your years?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Or give us one of the few.
Well, I can't not mention winning the World Barista Championship. That's the feeling that I got after working so hard for many years. It wasn't that many years, like 4 or 5 years, and achieving that goal.
That's a solid amount.
But that feeling was incredible, and actually, I enjoy watching sports a lot more now because I have some sports that I'm interested in, like cross-country skiing. It's quite a small sport, but here in Norway it's big. And I have some kind of people that I am a fan of there, and when they win, like when they win a World Cup or something like that, I get the same feeling inside my body that I have.
Yeah, right.
So
is that because you can relate?
Yeah, I think so.
Because you can relate to the hard work and.
Yeah. So it's kind of a release that it's a feeling that I've rarely had ever since.
Yeah, right.
And also, I have to say, working with the farmers is, if I think like I'm sitting now drinking coffee from Finca Tamana, it's a farm in Colombia that I've worked a lot with very closely. Normally I spend 2-3 months there a year because I bought land next to it. So I live on that farm when I work on my farm. But I buy coffee from Elias, and it's a coffee that I really enjoy drinking. It's not maybe the best coffee we have. We have more exciting coffees for sure, but it's really sweet, and just the kind of intellectual quality of drinking it, knowing all the work that's behind where we have come, where we started, and where we are now, and seeing the difference in quality really gives me a good feeling inside. So. And also just seeing how the family is progressing, and how much Elias is progressing, even without me. Now, he doesn't really need my advice anymore. He's fully capable of taking his own decisions. Of course, he always asks.
That's the winner. That's the winner. Building the community up.
Yeah. So it's seeing that being part of that story is really a strong experience for me. And you know, I consider them family now. Like Diego, who
Yeah.
was he's like the Colombian barista champion. He's been there that a couple of times. He came with
Cool.
me to that farm to translate, and then he met what is now his wife, Elias's daughter. They got married.
Oh, beautiful.
They got a kid together. They bought a farm together. So you know, it's a really good
Yeah.
feeling.
Man, this is great. Thanks for all the questions too, guys. Cashmere Cat. Tim, here's a real question. What do you think of all the fancy instant coffees? A lot of roasters in the US have started making them, but do you think it's silly?
Hello, by the way. He's a good friend of ours from Norway.
Cool.
I forgot the question was about instant coffee, yeah?
Oh, it's about instant coffee and the journey that it's taking at the moment. A lot of roasters are starting to venture into instant coffee, obviously rebranding it, and that's the first time I've heard of that. I'm interested.
I haven't really had a good one, to be honest. I think they normally taste a little stale. But, you know, if that's your only option, if you are on an airplane, for instance, and the other option is really bad instant coffee, of course, the good instant coffee is much better. But you know, I'm not addicted to coffee myself, so I can easily go without coffee. So if my only option is to drink a slightly stale instant coffee, then I would just drink something else, like a tea or, you know, a beer or, you know, soda or whatever. But I do see that some of them are tasting better than others, for sure. And if you find one that you like, it's, you know, a good travel companion. I know Cashmere Cat travels a lot, so it's a very easy way to make a good cup of coffee, or a decent cup of coffee at least, on a plane or on the road.
I'd love to hear Cashmere Cat. Like, is the branding based on that specialty theme, or I'd love to know if it's got. We've got Blend 43 and
there's a lot
international
of roasters who are offering instant coffee actually.
Yeah, right.
I'm not sure how successful it is because, you know, in my experience, people who drink instant coffee, they aren't interested in good coffee. You know, they're just interested in convenience. So I'm not sure that
exploring
it's a commercial success. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it's a commercial success, but it's a fun product that I think, at least for some roasters, can be something, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of like, you know, you see specialty capsules. And then when you buy them, they come with a lot of instructions on how to brew them. It's got to be like 60 grams in the cup and blah, blah, blah. It's like, you missed the point. People who like capsules want it for convenience, not because they want to measure the grams in their cup.
That's right. Hong Kong barista, shout out to you, mate. What kind of cow's milk do you use in your cafe? Example, specific diet, organic, unhomogenized. Thanks, Hong Kong barista.
In Norway, we're not that advanced. We have whole milk, skim milk, and something in between. We have organic dairy in the middle of Norway, which we buy from. It's the only fully organic dairy in Norway. And because they're small and they have some product variation, but, you know, they mix milk from all the farmers around there because, you know, they're selling quite a lot now. And it's, so we can't really isolate milk to a single farm or something here, because it's quite strict to set up a dairy and also expensive. So most of them are in like cooperatives or something like that. So we just use whole milk, and we also use oat milk from Oatly at the moment for our non-dairy drinkers. It's not the best oat milk that I've tasted. But in our market, it's the best one we have. We used to buy one that was a little bit better, I think, but it went out of production because it didn't sell enough. So that's a little
When
sad.
you say used to, I mean, I think oat milk here has been in the last 6 months, and correct me if I'm wrong, but has oat milk been around for a little while longer than the last 6 months in Norway?
Well, in Norway, it's been around maybe for a year or 2 years, but in Sweden, there's actually a long tradition. So Oatly is actually an old Swedish company.
Right.
And also, like in Colombia, you drink avena, which is, oat milk. It's like oats soaked in water. They put cinnamon and sugar, and it becomes this kind of slightly slimy but delicious drink. That is, if you drink it cold, it's delicious. But I think, personally, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but I sometimes if I ever want to drink a cappuccino, at the moment I kind of prefer oat milk, because I'm not so into milk anymore,
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that?
I feel you. It feels thicker each year. Like it kind of hangs around and sticks in my mouth, and it's kind of like sugar. Sugar used to be like, I'm completely off refined sugar. I'm completely off kind of those sweet sugars because it's just changed.
Yeah, but when I go to Denmark, they have fantastic milk in Denmark. So when I go there, I might, drink a milk drink. We also have like a cold cappuccino in our store, which is made with milk, and that's delicious. So that's kind of the only milk drinks that I drink myself.
Anyway, which method, you're all good. Tim, which method brings out the most sweetness, French press, V60 or Chemex?
Well, Chemex is not a good brewing method whatsoever, I think. And it's basically down to the paper filters. It's just, not very good.
Wow.
So I normally don't use a Chemex, to be honest. If I do, I will put like a V60 filter and a V60 filter holder in the Chemex. But it just, the filter is so slow, and for that, people normally compensate by grinding a lot coarser, which means you still get a lot of the fines that blocks the filter, but it's much harder to extract the coffee. So yeah, you can get like a cleaner taste, but it's normally, not so well extracted, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. When it comes to brewing methods in general, I think, it doesn't really matter which one you use, as long as you understand how to brew with it and can extract enough. So if you start measuring extraction, for instance, and total dissolved solids, then if you hit kind of the same brewing recipe with a French press or an AirPress or V60, there's no real difference in sweetness or how the coffee tastes. Maybe you'll get a slightly different mouthfeel from French press because you're not filtering the oils out. But I normally do this when I train baristas in our store. We make French press, V60, and AirPress to the same exact recipe. So meaning you can't grind the same, you have to grind differently. So we're hitting the same extraction with the same strength. And normally they can't really tell that one is better than the other. Maybe you prefer the French press more because of the more oily texture, that's it. But so just learn how to brew with one method and stick to that. That's my best tip.
Joseph, auto exec, how do you do Nordic roasts with good development? I don't know if that's a jab or. I like
it. I'm not even sure if we do it ourselves. It depends on who you ask, I guess. But well, I think any roast style is difficult to nail, for sure. If you want to do a slightly darker roast, it's easy to get coffee dark in color, but getting it to taste really good, it might be quite difficult. And it's the same with light roast. Getting it light in color is easy, but getting it to taste good is a little bit more challenging. So it really depends on your roaster, but I think a lot of people tend to roast too slow when they do light roasts. You kind of got to speed up the process a little bit, actually, and get that momentum going. It's difficult to say because it's so different from roaster to roaster, but the best way to learn how to do it is to do a lot of sample roast of different types of sample roast of one coffee, tasting it and kind of understand what does this coffee has to offer, and then try to roast it on a bigger roaster and try to kind of mimic that kind of flavor. If you have a little bit too much greenness, it might be that you have not enough heat at the end. I think a a lot of people are very afraid of having too much heat at the end of the roast. If you have very dry coffees, like low moisture content, you need more heat at the end. And if you have very moist coffees, you can, in my experience at least, have less heat at the end, but you need more in the beginning. So it's really complicated to kind of just say in one sentence how to do it. The way we work
everyone's hoping that you solve their dreams and confusion at the moment.
Yeah,
like you're the Pope.
The way we work is actually trial and error. So we do testing and we taste, and I always have something to compare. If I'm unsure, I put a dark coffee on the table, or any coffee it's any roast. It doesn't really matter actually, but it's quite easy if you have quite a dark coffee on the table, and if you cup light roast next to that, they shouldn't taste green. If they taste green, you're doing something wrong. But you get that kind of contrast when you have this kind of very heavy developed coffee, and then all of a sudden you're tasting something light. And if you get this kind of really green pea flavor, then you're doing something not right.
Federico, hopefully I'll get this question right. How do you measure the beverage weight to input it on the Coffee Tools app and then be able to calculate the EXT percentage from cupping, I think this is?
From cupping, yeah. Well, there is a beverage weight kind of little spot in the Coffee Tools app, and with cupping, it's quite easy. You don't even have to put in the beverage weight. You can just put in the brew water weight because it doesn't disappear from the cup. But if you want to measure beverage weight on V60 or something, you would tear a scale with the vessel that you're brewing in, and then measure it afterwards and see how much liquid you actually got, and that's the beverage weight. It's quite simple.
Thanks everyone for these questions. This is brilliant. You're definitely a person that people want to get a hold of.
Yeah, this is fun.
Usually I have to kind of listen to you and try and come up with questions, and sometimes I'm out too. But this is brilliant.
Cool.
I'm going to pick you another one here. Do you have a favorite bean of choice, an underrated one to try? Thanks, Reynolds Wrap. Something that you're loving at the moment, or that you're excited to see it develop?
It's hard to say because it really depends on my mood and everything. And I'm not. I love drinking special coffees, of course, but from normally I like today, for instance, for breakfast, I tend to drink coffees that are not so complicated. So I'm kind of more interested in cleanliness and sweetness these days than I am, it doesn't have to be the most exciting coffee when I drink it. Of course, I love to cup those and drink those as well, but I can really appreciate coffees that have like really smooth mouthfeels, very sweet, that kind of lingers well, and that you can taste that it's produced really well. And at the moment I'm drinking just Variedad Colombia, which is a hybrid variety from Finca Tamana. It's actually from December 2018, so people will say, well, that's old, but it's tasting really good. And that's because it's produced well and stored well, so it's not tasting aged at all actually. And but the most exciting coffee that I've tasted during the last year, I have to say, has been a Sudan Rumé from Gilberto in Los Pirineos in El Salvador. That coffee is just amazing. It tastes like mandarin juice with the spices. It's really, really something different. Yeah, and
it's kind of rolls into another question here. Sorry, Tim. Ben Vishny, what is your opinion on how long coffees are good after roast? Some say even washed processed coffees, if roasted on a loring, should not be consumed before 3 to 4 weeks.
Well,
I guess that, yeah. What's your opinion on how long coffees are good after roast?
Like, okay, first of all, whatever people say about coffee is not true. Even what I say is not true. Like, what I mean with that is, like, I can say something, but it doesn't apply to everything. And, there's no, like, real truths in coffee. Of course, there are some scientific stuff, like if you put water on coffee, you're going to extract the coffee, of course. But a lot of these kind of rules that we make up is it really, really depends. And for me, you know, with our washed coffees, we tend to rest it at least 4 or 5 days before we taste it. So when I do production cupping, for instance, I do that every Monday, but the coffee was roasted at earliest, or like the latest, I guess, the Thursday before. So we roast normally Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I will do the quality control the following Monday. That's just because I want the coffees to rest, because they taste a little gassy in the start. And I don't think there is a big difference in whether you roast it on a Loring or a Probat or a Dietrich. It depends on how you actually roasted the coffee. Like if it's roasted slow, fast, dark, light. If you quench the coffee, you know, commercial roasters will quench the coffee with water. It will degas much faster than if you don't quench. If you pack the coffee with nitrogen gas or some kind of inert gas in the bag, you know, you can rest the coffee for 2-3 weeks without any problems, and the coffee will taste really good afterwards. But if you don't flush the bags with nitrogen, the coffee is going to start oxidizing, and after 2-3 weeks, you can start to taste that kind of staleness. So it really, really depends on so many factors when the coffee tastes at its best. So I really recommend just speaking with the roaster and asking them, you know, what's in their experience when they normally like to drink the coffee. But personally, you know, when I take coffee to drink at home, I don't go for the freshest ones. I normally go for coffees that are, you know, 2 weeks old. That's normally when I see them. They're really open and nice.
This is a good question. I mean, this has probably been spoken about forever, since everyone puts their coffee in the freezer back in the day. But what's your opinion on freezing coffee beans?
Oh, I don't really need to do it myself. I have access to coffee in abundance, so I don't really like to do it. But I guess if you're a consumer and you bought a little bit too much, you can, you know, split it up and put it in a Ziploc or whatever and squeeze out the air and freeze. It's no problem. Take it out and grind it straight away. It doesn't matter. But it for sure prolongs the shelf life of coffee, even if it's green or roasted, for sure. Like, there's no doubt about it. But you need to keep it in some kind of bags that have where you can squeeze out the air. Otherwise, you can get this kind of frost damage on it, like condense and so on. But you know, I do see on Instagram people buying a bag of coffee, splitting it into many small vacuum-packed plastic bags, sealing them. You know, it's a lot of plastic for coffee. So maybe you should just buy a little bit less at a time and drink it faster. It's a little wasteful, I think. So if you don't have to, you know, there's no reason to do it. I don't think it makes the coffee that much better. You know, even if when you grind it, when it's frozen, it's a little bit more evenly ground, you get a little bit less fines, you know.
Sren Giffo, hopefully that answers your question too, so I'm going to skip your question. Scandinavian, is that Scandinavian Alps coffee roasters? Nitrogen flush bags. Is that true or coffee science?
Whether they do it or not, I'm not sure, but we flush with nitrogen, so it's quite an easy process. Once you put the beans in the bag, we have a vacuum sealer that introduces nitrogen into the bag, so it kind of blows up the bag like a balloon, and then all the air is sucked out and vacuum sealed. So this is quite a normal process in commercial coffee. The biggest commercial roasters here in Norway, they use CO2 instead of nitrogen. But like Illy, for instance, they use nitrogen. We use nitrogen. A lot of people use nitrogen. And, you know, it's still sometimes debated in the specialty coffee world whether nitrogen flushed coffee is better for shelf life or not. You know, I think we can learn from the big commercial roasters. There's a reason why they do it. You know, you don't have to invent the wheel every time. You know, so it really, in my experience as well, it really helps keep the coffee fresh for a much longer time. But if you pack in like valve bags like we do, squeezing out the air is not a very good idea because you need a little bit of pressure inside that bag, and once the bag starts to blow up a little bit, you have a little bit of inside pressure, and that helps keep the valve closed. When you squeeze out all the air, there's no pressure to hold that valve in place, and then you can get oxygen from the outside going into the bag again. So, you know, I'm considering removing the valve from the bag. It's just they tend to blow up like balloons, and that's not so good for shipping.
Yeah, right. Reynolds Rat 1, I reckon we've got time for one more question, and you can maybe two. Have you ever long-term aging of green beans? I'm guessing that's, have you ever heard or ever experienced?
Yeah.
I've had good success with 3 to 5 years under cold storage, popular in Japan.
Yeah, I've tasted a coffee from, I think it was the 80s when I was in Japan a couple of years ago, and that was not very good.
Wow.
It's this famous cafe called Café L'Ambre or something. It's in in Ginza, and but you know, it didn't taste very nice, I have to say. It tasted leathery and woody, and I've also tasted coffee from the 50s that was stored in an attic, you know, at some person's house, and that was terrible. It tasted woody and not very nice. So, you know, I'm not a big fan of those kind of aged flavors myself, but I have had coffees that have tasted fresh after 2 years. And I just went through a coffee like that from Colombia. We had a roasting class where we tasted 2017 and June 2018, November 2018, and June 2019 harvests of coffee from the same farm. And we couldn't really tell the difference in terms of freshness. Because the coffee was produced well and stored in vacuum bags and so on. So, and George Howell, you know, sells coffee that has been frozen. But the whole idea is to keep the coffee fresh, not to get the aged flavors. So, you know, people who like aged coffees are into something that I'm not so into myself. So I can't really answer how to do it the best way.
We'll finish off with this one, another one from Philly Pie. I think it's probably a funny one. What's the most bizarre tasting note you've seen on a bag of coffee beans?
Well, I don't really know, but I just saw like a flavor wheel where the words "great value" was included, and I'm not sure if I can taste great value.
Is that a flavor? I want that tasting profile on my tongue.
Is that something that's to rich? I don't know.
Yeah, right.
I thought that was funny.
Right. Tim, mate, that's brilliant, and I appreciate your time. And
you're welcome.
Look,
it was fun.
These chats are there to bring value to the coffee community, and you've exceeded that today, mate. That's we could probably keep going forever, but if I don't chop it off now, Instagram cuts the video off, and I can't repost it. So I appreciate